What if I told you that self discipline is not about willpower? Welcome to the part one of the three-part series where we will dive into mastering self discipline. Today, we are not just scratching the surface, we are rewiring the way you and I think about self discipline in our day to day lives. Next week, we will tackle building sustainable habits around self discipline, and thereafter, we will deep dive into overcoming setbacks with respect to self discipline. And the reason of doing this is because not necessarily there will be every single day that motivation that we all keep hearing and talking about. So make sure you subscribe to the channel Unfold Learning Podcast and you stay tuned at the Unfold Learning Podcast with your host Kostav. And if you are new to this channel, I am Kostav, an engineer turned into a school teacher, into a trainer, into a HR professional, and now doing content creation with you all. Unfold Learning Podcast is a space where the intent and the aim is to break down the aspects of self discovery and growth mindset and help each and every one to feel empowered and equipped to be a better human being by breaking stereotypes. On that note, let's actually dive into today's topic, which is going to be about what is that science behind, what is the psychology behind self discipline. To understand this, it's important to understand the neuroscience of it. Now, what neuroscience tells us is that there are two parts to our brain. Number one is the prefrontal cortex, which is essentially the rational side of your brain. And number two is the limbic system, which essentially is the non rational or the impulsive side to the brain. Think of them as one being responsible, oriented towards systems, guardrails, etc., whereas the other part wants to be free, wants to be impulsive, wants to be reactive without any kind of a guardrail. Now, these are the two kinds of setup that are there in the brain. Elaborative study done by neuroscientists across the globe found that people with better impulse control have a stronger connection between their prefrontal cortex and their limbic system. Basically, the stronger the communication between these two parts of the brain, the easier it is to make disciplined choices. So, when you struggle really with discipline, it's not because you lack willpower. It's because your brain is literally wired to seek immediate gratification, and the two parts are trying to pull each cells away from each other and not be cohesive and not be in a sync. The good news is that we can always rewire it. I think before solutionizing it or before trying to understand what can be done better, with self discipline, it's extremely important to break some myths, to break some stereotypes, because there are a lot that are out there, which in itself becomes a deterrent when someone thinks about being self disciplined. Now, let me call out at least three myths or the stereotype that exists and that you and I have to challenge as we think about infusing self discipline in our day to day lives. Myth number one: discipline is all about willpower. Again, I'm repeating myself. Willpower is like a phone battery. It drains fast. Studies have shown that decision fatigue weakens self control. The real secret: building systems that reduces decisions. That's an easy way to navigate this. Myth number two: self discipline means saying no to everything. It's actually about saying yes to what matters. It's not a restriction. Think of self discipline as a direction. Think of it as you are making a choice to eat healthy over fast food. You're not really limiting yourself, it's a choice that you are making. That's the empowerment that it brings in. To do what? To enjoy the long term gratification. Myth number three: some people are just born disciplined. Well, absolutely not. I would fight tooth and nail to disagree with this particular statement. Research shows self-discipline is a learned skill, not a personality trait. Meaning you can always train yourself, train your brain to get better at it. So if anybody tells you that you don't have the skill, you don't have the trait to be self-disciplined, well, chuck that thought out of your mind, because it's a learnable, it's a trainable skill. Well, this makes me curious to know, out of these three myths, that discipline is about willpower, discipline is about saying no to joy or fun, and some people are born with discipline, which of these myths did you hear or did you believe in? Do drop in a comment below. I'm going to share with you four strategies that I have practiced myself, and you can choose to incorporate these practices. Also, I am being mindful of the fact that maybe these practices would not be very new for you, right? Maybe you are already doing, but the hope is that there will be some nuances that you can take back as a new learning. Yeah, so let's actually deep dive into these strategies with which we can train ourselves, train our brain to be more self disciplined. And of course, break those stereotypes that we discussed before. Number one, the 5 second rule. I'll give credit to Mel Robbins, and it is Mel Robbins' hack. So I'm picking it from there because I did, and it's a really good one. Well, it is basis on a fact where your brain takes about 5 seconds to talk you out of doing something that is uncomfortable. Next time you feel resistance in doing something that is new, that you're trying to develop or learn, that is probably painful, count backwards: five, four, three, two, one, and move. It works like a charm. Try this, the 5 second rule. Number two, temptation building. Well, this is a strategy that I picked up from James Clear's strategy list. It's again a very interesting one. What it talks about really is pair what you need to do with something that you love to do. For example, if you have a list of your favorite music and you would want to start your day by listening to those music, pair it with something that you got to do. Maybe you got to read, maybe you got to journal, maybe you got to hit the gym, right? Pair these two together, and this pairing is called as temptation building. What you do is you stack two things, what you need and what you love, and then you run with it. It really tricks your brain to form positive associations with pain, with long term aspects, with hard work. Basically, it's trying to hit the limbic side of your brain. Number three, the idea shift. It's a mind trick again. Instead of saying, I have to work out, say, I am a person who works out. Look at the nuance between the change of the sentence framing. I have to work out. There is some sort of a pressure, there is some sort of a compulsion, versus I am a person who works out. You're making it a part of your identity. You have accepted who you are as an individual. That identity based discipline sticks way more than forcing yourself into something. That's identity shift. And the last one, micro wins or dopamine hacks. Now, typically, the limbic system tries to overpower the prefrontal cortex because it's about reaction, it's about impulsion, right? It's about immediate gratification. So it keeps seeking on dopamine, right? Dopamine kind of is that performance matrix within our brain that makes us like something, that makes us feel satisfied. It comes through anticipation, etc. You want to know more about dopamine culture? I don't know if it is showing somewhere here, but in one of my previous episodes I have elaborated on these across 2 episodes, and so don't miss out on that piece. So coming back, micro wins and dopamine hacks. Our brain loves small wins instead of a long term thing, right? That's why we enjoy like what we are getting now versus waiting for something to happen later. It's like I need to write a book versus I'll write for 10 minutes every single day, right? Remember, every novel starts with that first one sentence. So those are the four strategies that I thought I would like to share with you, which are the 5 second rule, the temptation building, the identity shift, and the micro wins and the dopamine hacks. Which of these strategies would you want to pick up? Do comment below and let me know, or share which of these strategies you have exercised and what have you seen as an impact, because there could be a possibility that you are doing these strategies but still you're not being able to, you know, ensure that discipline in your day-to-day life. And that's okay, because that's what we are going to cover in part 2 and part 3, because there are going to be setbacks with these as well, because there are going to be aspects of routines, if they are not set well, these are going to fall flat. So let me know in the comment section, and I'll be curious to know, and that'll of course inform the next two parts that I'll be creating for you all. On that note, let's wrap it up. Let's just summarize. So we started by understanding the psychology of self-discipline. We looked into some of the stereotypes and the myths that exists, which we need to challenge every single time when we think about self-discipline. And then we looked into the 4 strategies that are there that we can practice every single day as we move forward. Now that we understand this, imagine combining that with a foolproof strategy to build unshakable habits. That's exactly what we'll cover in the part 2 coming next week. Make sure you like this video, you subscribe to the channel Unfold Learning podcast, and you turn on your notifications, because we are just getting started. We are going to make it more and more interesting, yet we will keep it simple and meaningful. And before you go, do drop in a comment about, you know, your biggest struggle of self-discipline, and what's that one thing that you're taking away from today's video. Remember, discipline isn't about being perfect, it's about progress. See you next week. This is your host Kaustav at the Unfold Learning podcast. Thank you for being there.